It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is Medicaid Planning. And joining me is Bill Johnson, board-certified elder law attorney. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Joe.
Now, Vera, I want to make sure you understand exactly what we're doing with today's show. I've asked Bill to do his Medicaid Planning seminar, and we're going to do it in two parts. Part one, we're going to talk about some of the basic things you need to understand about what he's going to talk about in part two. And when we do part two, we'll recap a little bit about what we're talking about in part one, but you need to watch both parts to really understand what Medicaid planning is. And I cannot emphasize how important I personally feel it is for you to understand what Bill is going to talk about in this two parts, because it could save you not only thousands of dollars of finances, but untold worry, Bill. And I think that's important.
I think so too.
Hey, I know you do. So let's talk about, and I have 10 questions I want Bill to answer. And the first one is, what is Medicaid planning?
Well, Medicaid planning is just simply making somebody eligible for Medicaid benefits and primarily what we're talking about today is for long-term care planning. So what we're utilizing is knowing the rules of Medicaid and making somebody eligible so that then they can apply for long-term care benefits through Medicaid.
And with today's economy, I think it's going to be even more important to understand what it is, not only what you're going to talk about, but what we're talking about today, the terminology, and why is that so important, Bill?
Well, there are basically only three ways to pay for long-term care. Way number one is you pay out of your pocket, and that may not be such a good idea with assisted living facilities starting about $3,600 a month. Nursing homes, $9,000 a month. Home health care bills that can range anywhere from $1,000 to all the way up to $15,000 a month. So it may not be such a good idea to pay out of your pocket. Your second alternative when it comes to long-term care is to have long-term care insurance, but a lot of people can't afford it. They're not eligible because they got pre-existing conditions, or simply they're in denial. This is never going to happen to me, and then boom, it happens. And then the third way you pay for long-term care is, you qualify for Medicaid. So if you don't have long-term care insurance and something happens, you're either going to go through all your money, what they call the spend down, or you're going to make yourself eligible for Medicaid.
And a lot of people simply will not accept the fact that Medicare is not Medicaid and Medicaid is not Medicare. Medicare is a medical program.
Yes, Medicare is health insurance.
Right.
Medicaid is one facet of Medicaid is paying for long-term care.
Paying for care.
Correct.
Right. And something you said just a minute ago, it's not going to happen to me.
Right. Most people are in denial. In fact, if you looked at, I think Money Magazine did a poll of people getting retirement age and what their concerns were, and they range basically like outliving your money, having enough money to do things, maintaining a style of living. Way down that list, like at 12 or 13, was paying for long-term care. And people really need to start thinking about, getting long-term care insurance at retirement at a minimum, maybe even before.
I've had people say to me, Bill, Joe, you put all that money into long-term care. Well, if you die, you don't use it. I said, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about dying, because if that's the case, then my wife is not, she'll have what we have and she can live on it.
Right.
But I didn't want to be caught in a position where it would destroy what I worked so hard to put together for my wife and myself. And when something happened to me, for Terry to be able to live comfortably. I think it's important. And that's why I took the long-term care.
And now they have some hybrid products out there that mix life insurance with long-term care insurance. So if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And they can even do some things with annuities now that help pay for long-term care.
Well, that's something else. And when we get into the second part of the show, you'll talk about the annuity plan. But maybe we could just quickly. I know a little bit about this mix of insurance and annuities. Is there something that you could say quickly that would help our viewers understand a little bit more what you're just talking about, or is this something they need to talk to?
Well, what we were talking about is different products that the insurance industry has now put on the market that combine long-term care insurance with either life insurance or with an annuity with a high deductible, so that when you put your money in there, if you don't need long-term care, then that just rolls over to a death benefit. But if you need it, it'll pay out long-term care and your death benefit will go down.
Why is the insurance community recognized the need for that type of a product?
Well, they've recognized that what you're saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that being a turnoff for people purchasing the product. So now they've come out with other products that, give you a flexibility, basically.
They're going to make more money, but they're going to make it more flexible for me to keep some of the money I give them when they make more money.
Maybe something like that. I'm not quite sure.
That's one way to look at it, though. It is. Why is it important for people to start thinking about this in their 20s and 30s and not wait till their 60s, 70s, and 80s?
Well, you need to start thinking about what is your long-term care plan. Usually we think people around 55 should start looking into this, because if you don't have enough money set aside to self-pay, and I gave you the numbers at the beginning of the show, which is a considerable amount of money, then you are, into two different camps, either getting long-term care insurance or trying to get eligible for Medicaid. So you really need to start planning which way you're going and how you're going to do that.
You say, how could you do a better job of planning for Medicaid planning early on?
Well, one is Medicaid has a look-back period. It is 5 years, 60 months. So what they're looking for is if you've given any money away in those 5 years prior to applying. Okay, so if you're relatively healthy and you think you'll be healthy in the next 5 years, you simply could divest yourself of assets and wait out the look-back period. As you get older and older, you don't necessarily have time on your side and can't really have a crystal ball as to when those things would be available. Also, if you were gifting, that would be giving your kids money or things, you would have to make sure that you didn't do that 5 years to applying for Medicaid.
Or it can incur a big penalty in your
You will
Medicaid.
incur a disqualification period in which you are ineligible for benefits. So, if you don't know what the rules are and you're continuously giving your kids, that IRS amount, $14,000, $15,000 a year that you don't have to pay gift taxes on, and don't know the Medicaid rules, you may create a problem for yourself down the road.
You just mentioned IRS. I've been getting recent phone calls about this outfit threatening me with a lawsuit. It's IRS threatening me with a lawsuit if I don't call them and do this and do that. I don't do anything. And
that's good, Joe, because I get those phone calls too, and they've been calling me lately, and you just ignore those. That is not the IRS calling.
I know it's not the IRS, but how does a company or whatever, how do they scam you when they do that?
Well, what they do is they answer the phone, pretend to be the IRS, and then they ask you to provide them with your name, social security number, and address, maybe even your date of birth. And with that information, they can use that to go about and access your credit records.
Is there anybody that you can report something like that to?
Sure, you can report it to the Sheriff's Department. If it's interstate, you can report it to the FBI. However, a lot of these people who are doing these things are overseas. And so, the American law enforcement doesn't reach all the way into Nigeria or some of these other countries.
I forgot about it. With the phone systems today, they can do that.
Yes, they can. They can do it from anywhere in the world.
So the smartest thing to do is just to hang up
and ignore it.
Ignore it. Okay. What are some of the real pitfalls, Bill, in Medicaid planning?
Well, I think we went over one. One is if you gift prior to applying for Medicaid, a gift is defined as giving something away without receiving fair market value in return. That can create a disqualification period. Another big one that a lot of people don't realize, but in Florida, your homestead is protected. They cannot put a Medicaid lien on your homestead. They cannot take your house. So you don't have to worry about that. A lot of people are from up north and they, when somebody gets ill, they freak out and start transferring the house out to the kids' names and things like that. That is a transfer during the look-back period that will create a disqualification period. There's no need to transfer the house to anybody. The house is protected, and even when you pass on and leave the house basically to your relatives, it's still protected. So there's no need to start moving the house around, and if you start moving accounts around without seeing a specialist, you're probably going to run into some problems when you go to apply for Medicaid.
Would you say it would be very, very advisable for more people that are even contemplating about doing what you and I are talking about today, to see an attorney that does the type of planning that you do, so they can get at least pointed in the right direction? So I
would firmly agree that. One of the biggest problems in this area is a lot of people take and do self-help in this without even knowing the rules. They listen to their neighbor from Massachusetts and they tell them, oh, well, they're going to take your house. Next thing you know, they're doing deeds, moving the house out to the kids' names, and all they've done is created a huge problem.
That was one of the questions I had here. I said, do Medicaid rules vary from state to state?
Yes, they do. Even though Medicaid is a federal program, the states interpret that federal program. Also, the states can request from the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare variations, what we call waiver programs. And those variations allow them to do different sorts of programs. For instance, here in Florida, you can get Medicaid services at home or in an assisted living facility in addition to a nursing home. You go across the border into Georgia, the only kind of service you can get there is nursing home services.
Say it again? What happens in Georgia?
In Florida, we have a waiver program that allows for home and community-based services. Georgia does not. The only program they have there is the Medicaid program that helps pay for nursing home care.
So when a person moves to Florida, what happened where they were is going to probably be different in Florida.
Correct. It all depends. So if you have somebody on Medicaid in New York and then they come to Florida, there may be different rules apply.
Yeah, because the Medicaid, their benefits in New York don't transfer to Florida.
No, you have to reapply.
Yeah, everything have to reapply.
Yes.
That's why I get a lot of phone calls. Our organization gets a lot of phone calls. And I have an easy way to handle those phone calls. I call either Sandy or Melanie in your office and say, these people are going to call you.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons. And it's just like in other areas of the law, if you're an expert in elder law attorney, I feel comfortable in telling people when they ask me, I'll refer them to you. I've got other attorneys that are in trial law, they're in different types of law, and we refer people to them. What we've done as an organization is try to find out who are the better people that we know about in the county, whether it be an attorney, a roofer, an electrician, an air conditioning company, you name it. We try to refer people to those people that we know treat seniors fairly and they do things honestly. That's the purpose of the organization.
Right.
We try to help people navigate a system successfully. Another question I had was understanding the basic rules before even starting a planning process. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Well, before you go down the whole Medicaid route, you got to know what the rules are, because you can, as I mentioned before, you can seriously misstep if you don't understand the rules. So you really need to go educate yourself and get at least a basic framework of how this works. We talked about problems gifting monies. We talked about people who, panic and think they got to transfer their house to somebody. There are other pitfalls out there that people may not be aware of. And they think they may be well-intentioned, but in reality, what they're doing is just creating a bigger mess. And so if you don't know the basic rules on how to be eligible for Medicaid, you really shouldn't, obviously play the game, so to speak.
Well, let's say if a person came to you and said, Bill, I gave my children $50,000. I wasn't aware I couldn't do that. Is there any way to untangle that?
You can always undo a gift by having the people you gave the money to give it back. A lot of times they don't have it, but there are ways we can structure things where we can move money out to the kids so that they will have the money to give it back and undo that gifting problem.
Now, a lot of our viewers may be watching us today and say, what the heck are Bill and Joe talking about? Are they talking about ways to circumvent the system? No. The federal government designed this Medicaid system.
Correct.
And they designed it in such a way that if early on we started doing what you and I are talking about, families have a better way to pay their own way into the future and not require the federal government to pick up the cost of their care so much.
Yeah, I was talking about home and community-based services, right, that you can get Medicaid to help with services at home or in an assisted living facility. What I didn't say was for those types of services, there's a wait list of about 52,000 people. If you have long-term care insurance and you need to stay in your house and want to stay in your house and get services in your house, obviously there's no wait list. So, a lot of times having long-term care insurance will help you with your overall plan a lot better than thinking you can rely on Medicaid to pick up the tab.
Okay. Now, in talking about providing home care services, I believe that there is, if it already isn't in place, it's in place to some extent. But is there a thought given to where they're going to enable families to draw Medicaid money and, in fact, pay their own family members? Say a family member may have to quit a job to come home to work.
Right.
There's putting something in place where they can use some of this Medicaid money to pay that person.
We can use the Medicaid money, but we can do something called a personal services contract.
Okay.
This is a way we can basically hire a family member and move some of the money from the individual and prepay the family member to help out with the care of that individual. And by doing so, we really accomplish two things. One is we reduce the assets of the patient, the one applying for Medicaid, right, to make them eligible. And two is we pay the family member for their time. And like you said, they may have given up a job, may have had to move, may have had to take a lesser paying position, or even Family Medical Leave Act, days. So it may be imperative that we find a way to get money over to this person to provide care, and who better to provide care than your family member?
And it certainly is cheaper, because I know for a fact that we have helped families that wanted to go the opposite and they wanted full-time care 24 hours a day. And the cost for that is roughly $300 if you hire a private nurse around the clock and you bring in 3 shifts. You're going to pay close to $300 a day. You're talking $9,000, $9,000 to $10,000 a month.
I've seen bills, home health care bills of $150,000 a year. And that was for nursing level of care at home for somebody who is extremely ill.
Where do families get the money to pay that kind of bill?
Most people cannot keep up that level of spending for very long without going broke.
And then when they go broke, they go completely on Medicaid.
Correct?
And their level of care goes down because Medicare or Medicaid just really can't afford to do what you can do with.
Well, if we could, have Medicaid involved and then maybe have paid a family member to be involved, the level of care, by doing some planning, we can actually make that person's life much better.
But that's all getting somebody like you involved that knows the system, knows the law, knows the assets, and go right back to the house business. Instead of using that house and thinking you had to give it away
or sell it,
you could have taken money that you might have had and the assets that you had to spend down. If you had a $200,000 mortgage and you had $300,000 in the bank, you could pay the house off, still have $100,000 in the bank, and probably that amount would get you under the requirement or very close to it for assets you could keep, cash assets. And your house is still paid for.
One strategy you could do to reduce your assets is simply pay off debt. And that could be the mortgage on your house.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about all the technical terms, and I think we're going to do that in part 2.
We will.
But there are things that can be done to, help preserve your assets. And certainly paying off debt, paying off your mortgage on your house, paying off the loan on your car, paying off your credit cards, those are all permissible.
Yeah. What happens if you violate the look-back rules?
What they do is they look at the amount that was transferred and they divide it roughly by 8,000. I'm rounding here.
Okay.
So if you had moved 80,000, they divide that by 8,000. That equals 10, and you are disqualified from getting Medicaid benefits for 10 months from the date you apply.
And in almost all cases, when the need is so great for you to try to get on to Medicaid, is almost disastrous.
Somebody's going to have to cough that up. And, that 8,000 is basically what the average of nursing home care costs per month in the state of Florida. Well, here in Brevard County, there are nursing homes that are $9,000, $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
So if you can't get services for 10 months, somebody in your family better find some money to cough up and pay for those days, because Medicaid is not going to pay for it.
Because some of the care required of the patient or the client in the nursing home simply can't be done at home.
Correct.
And
there are people who just cannot stay home at times. I get these, 100-pound ladies with their husbands are immobile and weigh 250 pounds. There's no way she's going to be able to pick them up and take them in to get a shower. There's just no way.
What do you do when you get cases like that? You feel, listen, you deal with it from the financial aspect side of it. When people call our organization and they tell us about these things, my heart goes out to these people, Bill.
Right.
I refer a lot of them to you. I refer them to other organizations. We just thank the good Lord that there are people that most of the time can help us somehow mitigate the situation. Not all the time, but almost all the time, we find organizations or people that can come together to do something to help.
Yeah, so usually in a situation like that, you're going to have to either buy or rent a Hoyer lift to be able to move that person around.
Yeah.
And some people simply can't do that in their house. So that, it may be a circumstance where we're going to have to move somebody out of their house into a nursing home that has all that equipment and is able to do it much easier.
Believe it or not, we've answered almost all the questions, and I still got 2 minutes and 21 seconds to go. My 9th question.
Okay.
Is Medicaid planning part of estate planning?
I think it should be. When you talk about let's talk about elder law.
Okay.
You know, when I talk to seniors about elder law, I really look at three things. One is, what is their estate planning? Two, what is their incapacity planning? And three, what is their long-term care planning? So I want to hit all those areas. You know, do they need a trust, or can they do it with a will, or just simply some beneficiary designations? Do they have a power of attorney, healthcare surrogate, living will, pre-need guardian declaration? And then what is the plan if somebody has a long-term care illness? Are we going to try and get long-term care insurance? Can we afford it? Do we have it? Or are we looking down the line to apply for Medicaid? Or are we wealthy enough that we're simply going to self-insure and not worry about the question?
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
What are some of the other rules, or are there any other rules that we need to think about when we start the building of our Medicaid plan?
Well, the first thing we need to do is you need to sit down with a professional and figure out what your assets and income are, because Medicaid is a means-tested plan. And you have to know what assets count towards the asset limits and what assets do not count. And so it's really part of knowing what the rules are, and then you can look down the road. If something happens, this is how we become eligible.
Okay, now, that was the 10th question. Now, your real challenge is when we go into part 2 in just a minute, when we start part 2, you're going to have to encapsulate these 10 things you just answered in about 2 minutes. So think about doing that. And, I think this is an extremely important topic, folks. Estate planning, Medicaid planning, and it's something you really need to think about. But I want to thank you for watching today's episode of Helping Seniors. I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we would welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.